Okay, we are now recording. Hopefully you have all seen and digested the document we sent round. And we want to open up, I think, just by explaining how this came to be and what the committee position is on it. We're not going to go through the document line by line because hopefully you've read it at least once or twice. But maybe some background and context might be useful. Since we had our original discussions with the OCA about a merger 4 or 5 years ago, we have maintained open channels with them on a number of issues. We've been a little more communicative than perhaps we had been in the past. But the catalyst for this conversation initially was the fact that we had 6 OCA clubs expressing an interest in joining the Charwell League for 2021. Now, in the short term, 6 clubs means somewhere between 12 and 14 teams, and that would mean a fairly significant reconstruction of the Charwell League divisions, particularly from Division 5 down. Now, these teams, of course, would have to be elected by the membership at an AGM, but as far as the league is concerned, providing teams meet the criteria for entry, which all 6 of these do, we're committed to the best possible standard of cricket within the league, and so we would have been recommended.
What? Not now, mate.
Now, clearly, that is just an administrative and fairly short-term.
Let her tell her. Oh no.
Who's forgotten to mute?
How long is she going to be in? Was she damaged the tendons or anything?
Megas, mute your phone.
Megas, mute yourself.
It's all right, I've got him. Sorry, yeah, where was that? Yeah, so 12 teams coming into the league it's a nuisance, but it's an administrative issue rather than a structural one. It's not, however, a huge stretch to assume that we'll be faced with the same problem each year over perhaps 2, 3, 4 years. Now that becomes quite unsettling for our clubs as we've got to continually restructure. And to put not too fine a point on it, is basically a death of 1,000 cuts for the OCA, because they will just dissipate by 4 or 5 clubs or a dozen or so teams every season. On a more strategic level, it would seem to make sense that cricket in the region will be better served by a larger, more robust structure. But it also gives us the opportunity to address what is probably the biggest identified problem in recreational cricket, which is journey times. Now, as I said earlier, I don't want to spend time going over what we've already presented in the document, but before we open this up for discussion, I just want to say a word or two about the committee's position on the proposals that we've sent round to you. All of the ideas in that document are based on the experience of the people in the subcommittee, but more particularly the feedback that we've been getting from clubs both recently and over the last few seasons, from talking to players, administrators and people associated with clubs throughout the league. Now, to make a meeting like this of any use to anyone, we have to have some sort of fixed point to start from, and that's the intention of the document. We believe that it's an accurate representation of what we've learned from people, but we are not here to sell it to you or defend it against suggestions or comments. Certainly not from a structural or philosophical point of view. If you do find us defending something, it's probably from an administrative or technical base, based on our experience of administering the league over a number of years. You quite often get very good ideas that just practically are not workable. This meeting and the one tomorrow are an important part of the consultation process, which allows us to get the guidance and parameters for the membership to take any negotiations with the OCA forward, if indeed there is a will to go forward. Now, that's as much as I want to say at the start. I think we want this to be your meeting. If it turns out everyone's too shy to start, which I suspect is not going to be the case, we've got a list of topics that we want to get some feedback from you on, but I want to keep those back for now, as we really want this meeting to be on your terms rather than ours. So from there, I kind of like to open it up and see if anyone has thoughts, comments, questions. If there's questions on the structure, I'm happy to try and answer those for you. Suggestions, alternatives, etc., etc. So, who's up first? Anyone?
I'll go first if you like. Beyond making life easier for like on an organisational level for the Cherwell and the OCA, what do you think are the benefits of doing this for the clubs who are currently playing in those two leagues?
Well, the principal benefit, I think, is the regionalisation aspect of it, because it gives us an opportunity to, we've constructed a model using Google travel times and maps, and we've constructed one model of teams where we've got pretty much every journey time, every average journey time for every club down to under 30 minutes. Now, we consistently hear that one of the things that's putting young kids off playing, or older people off playing, or anyone off playing, is the idea that they've got to go somewhere and take an hour to get there and so on. The flip side of that is always, well, we're happy to travel if it's the quality of the cricket. And where we've looked at regionalisation before, and we have looked at it in the bottom 2 or 3 divisions, and the OCA have done the same thing in their division. It's lasted one season, maybe, and we've come away because we end up with the worst of both worlds, which is you can't really regionalise 20 teams over 2,000 square miles. The geography just doesn't allow for it. So you still end up with the journeys, and you end up with the mismatches, because if you regionalise 9 and 10, you potentially got the team that would have finished top of 9 playing against the team that would have finished bottom of 10, and nobody gets any joy out of the game. So the regionalisation aspect I think, is the principal one. There are other advantages that will come through, not least cost. Bringing the 2 leagues together, we've done a couple of financial models, and it would definitely not cost any more, and it would almost certainly cost clubs less to be part of the league structure, and by some significant amount. So there's an advantage there as well. It also provides for clubs who have an ambition and are perhaps playing around Cherwell 3, 4, 5 maybe, but feel like they've got potential to go forward. Depending on which structure we went for, you would have a much shorter route to a higher level of cricket, which would allow you to develop your players, develop your team, and get you up to potentially Division 1 a couple of years earlier. I've had this conversation with several clubs actually, where they said, you know, there was a year where we thought we were good enough to get to Division 1. By the time we got there, we were too old. Because it can take 4 or 5 years to get up there. On a shorter path, you can get there quicker if you're good enough. I think that those are the main points. I think there will be other bits to be got from it. Should they be playing against new clubs, which is always good. It will harmonise and strengthen cricket, particularly in Oxfordshire. We can see, from the Cherwell point of view, we're strong, and there's nothing broken. We don't want to fix. We're not going to try and fix it. But eventually, the weakness of the OCA will reflect into us as well. And I think by bringing the 2 together, we can make the structure more robust. But I think it's more the day-to-day benefits that reduce cost, reduce travelling times, that will benefit the Cherwell League. Mark.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, from a Challo's point of view, totally get the bit around. The only way we can be regionalised is by going cross-league, because we're always on the extremity of whatever league we're in. And I think the whole bit around this is the good thing for cricket rather than the good thing for individual clubs. The shorter path to the top is very admirable. And I think the whole bit for us would be that the more local nature at the bottom levels, that I totally take the piece around good cricketers will travel. That's why there's a Premier League that covers 3 counties. I think when you've got lower divisions where it's Longmarston away, that's going to be an issue. I know from our second team this year, from a purely personal point of view, the 4 away games we would have had on the original fixtures were Bledlow, Longmarston and Cropperdy. The chance of us getting a team to go there in a normal year is slim. In a reduced year was even less. And I think amalgamating the 2 leagues just gives you that whole option of you've got a massive numbers. And we look around the teams that are local to us, the clubs that are local to us, there's a whole lot of very good cricket we could play without having to travel much more than about 30 minutes. And I think that's why for cricket, from a personal and a professional point of view as well, is you've got to amalgamate these and you've got to go massive numbers, give you the huge base to allow you to streamline everything above it so that you get the right cricket for the right people in the right places with the right rules.
Mark, we've done some modelling on distances and travel times, and we believe it's around about 25 to 28 minutes journey with about around between 14 and 17 miles is roughly where we can get an average across the divisions.
Which would be amazing. And I know Brian sat through a lot of meetings with us several years ago doing something quite similar on a slightly bigger scale across the whole region. And we said then, if the only thing that came out of that was it started people talking, that was a huge bonus. And it looks like it has done that, and that it's got us to a point now. And having played OCA as well, I'd be horrified to see the OCA shrivel and die. Which I think it probably would do, as Ian alluded to earlier, that if you lose 6 teams, you lose 12 to 18 teams, you're suddenly into the OCA has a bigger problem than the Cherwell has now in terms of, or would have going forward, in terms of mismatches, because you've only got 3 or 4 divisions. So yeah, I think from Challow's point of view, we're hugely in favour. There's a few things around some of the restrictions that may or may not be in place, which I know I spoke to Dave about when we spoke. But that would come down to as we found out previously, it all comes down to the nitty gritty of when you put team names in certain divisions, whether that gets voted through. But I think for the good of cricket, we should vote through and push what's right for cricket rather than what's right for an individual club's 3rd team, 2nd team. We're at a point where we could lose an awful lot of cricketers having a year off, as Megas was saying earlier. And I think it's got to be the right thing for the game. That's a personal, not a professional view.
Just to add a bit on the regionalisation, to be clear, because of the nature of how our clubs are spread out, it doesn't mean you won't have a game further than the half an hour. But it means the majority will not be. But we have to make sure that we don't end up with too much of a split. So some clubs are travelling all the time and some aren't. So the average will absolutely come down significantly, but it doesn't mean you won't have potentially a longer journey than average, but you won't have the extreme journeys overall.
I think the underlying thing on regionalisation, we still have to be aware that we cover quite a large geographical area, and we are still only talking about 80 clubs when you put the 2 together. So you're not going to get 9 away games that you can walk to. That is just not going to happen. But no one's ever going to be in another season where you've got 9 away games where you meet at 10 o'clock to get to. And it's a move in the right direction, and it'll be a significant move in the right direction towards much more local cricket. Mr. Pryor.
I would just like to add, one of our hopes is that it will encourage teams, in Southwest Oxfordshire and West Oxfordshire. It's a huge benefit that, from Didcot's point of view, there's 11 OCA clubs within 10 miles of us. So I can see the benefit. But, obviously, if you get out to the Bletchley's and the Aylesbury area, our clubs of OCA level out there to come in and join in and fill in the numbers as well, which will help bring the impact more equally based all around the league.
is there anything in there that people don't like? Because, as I said at the beginning, this is the start of a consultation period, and we've spoken to most of the clubs one-to-one, with some members of the committee. This and tomorrow are about your opportunity as clubs to say, don't do that, please do this, and to get an idea, so that when we are talking to the OCA, if indeed that's the mandate we get, we know we're talking with a genuine mandate from the clubs as to what they do and don't want. So it's important to get out, if there's something you think, oh, not sure about that part, this is the time to get it out, and just let us know what it is, because we can only go on the information we've got, and if we don't have any, then we assume you're just happy for us to do what we think is right.
Neil, you had a whole list of things you wanted to ask. You want to start? You have to come off mute though now.
Hi Ian, it's Gary here.
Am I back?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Hiya. Yeah, I think really interested in the regionalisation, more so at the lower level than the higher level. I think it's important that we maintain the integrity of the higher levels of the Charwell League for sides and players that want to play the most competitive cricket they can. And I feel that should be determined at the higher levels by the division you're playing in rather than location. But I absolutely think it's a great idea introducing regionalisation, particularly in the lower levels, because we're looking to introduce a fourth side next year, and they'll have a lot of young players. So if we can reduce travelling there, so it wasn't clear to me what people's feelings were as to what level we should start to consider regionalisation. I'd just be interested what other people feel.
Well,
yeah,
Dave.
Yeah, go on. Okay, so we're considering tiers 1 to 4 as areas where there wouldn't be necessarily regionalisation, and 5 to 7 would be a regionalisation. So in the higher end of the league, it is about balancing playing standards, and lower end of the league, it's about participation.
Dave, sorry to butt in. When you said tiers 1 to 4, is that essentially the current divisions 1 to 4?
No.
Okay.
So the tier.
Could you
Yeah.
explain it?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of proposals on the table. One is similar to the Thames Valley proposal, where they've got a Division 1 of 10 teams, 2 Division 2s of 10 teams each, 2 Division 3s of 10 teams each, and then 3 Division 4s of 10 teams each. So there'd be the tier 1, 2, 3, and 4. There was another proposal that came out of our initial consultation where a couple of people would like to see a linear 1, 2, 3, and then a tiered structure at tier 4. So we have parallel divisions at tier 4. So there'd be 3 divisions at tier 4.
And the intention is that current OCA teams would come in from what's proposed as the tier 4 and below. So our divisions 1, 2, and 3, however they're split, 1 and 2 and 3, or 1, 2A and 2B, would be our current top 3 divisions, because we don't believe any OCA sides currently are strong enough to go into that top piece. But they would come in below that, and obviously we'd be providing cricket that we'd expect them to, with the right infrastructure, to strengthen if that was what their desire was. But the top 3 divisions, however they're cut, will be the top 3 Cherwell divisions as of last year.
So, quick question on how you split those divisions. Where we're saying tier 4 down is regionalised. How are you splitting tier?
No. You're only saying one. Sorry to butt in, but I think if I correctly what David's just said, there's actually only one division that isn't regionalised.
Right. Okay.
Is that right?
No,
not quite. No. So divisions tier 2 and tier 3 would be purely based on ability, and so we would try and balance the divisions.
But then still be, you haven't got all the best teams in one league. You've got them split between two leagues here, haven't we?
That's our question of if you've got...
No, all the best teams are in Division 1.
Well, the best 10 are.
Okay.
Yeah, the best 10 are, yeah. But then, okay, so if you go further
11
down...
11 to 30...
Yeah, so 11 to 30 would be then spread across 2 divisions.
So
Or
how would that split work, Dave?
Yeah.
Initially we were looking at 5 teams from each of 2 and 5 teams from 3.
And we'd probably consider some element of geography in there, but it would either be the top 3 teams, top 3 divisions as they were at the end of last season, or 2 and 3 split between 2 divisions where we would hope that the standard was relatively comparable between the 2 of them. But obviously that's quite difficult to get exactly right, but that would be the intention.
What advantage does that give? What advantage does that give over just doing 2, 3 and in straight linear hierarchy?
So in time, we would expect that the teams that were playing in tier 2 would get better. Players don't generally get worse by playing against better players. We've seen in the Thames Valley that their tier 2 is a strong division, and their participation in the home counties, they have twice as many teams as we do in the home counties. So I would consider that maybe the Thames Valley League is a stronger league. It shouldn't necessarily
Dave, don't
be the
forget,
case.
When the home counties league started, we only had 2 teams in the mix. I think they had 7 that were fast tracked into it. So
correct.
They had a base initially that they worked from there. That's a little bit.
But that was 15 years ago, and there's 2 teams come down every year.
Hang on.
So if they weren't good enough, they would have come down.
But with the Thames Valley, Dave, you've got to be careful. There's also different rules around overseas and paid players.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah,
which means it's probably known the Thames Valley reasonably well. It's easier for a Thames Valley team to go up and stay up. Than it is for a Cherwell team to go up and stay up because of the shift in mentality around how a club works.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure of that, but yes, okay.
Well, if you pay them through Division 1, and you can do so and have overseas, your chance of keeping those in the Premier League is higher than a Cherwell team who doesn't pay players, can't play players, has a much stricter limit, which I think is good on overseas. Means it's a huge change, and there is, if you look at who goes up and who goes down, there has been a lot more up and down Cherwell teams than there has been Thames Valleys.
We're not saying it would be immediately comparable, but I mean, I think and that's really part of why there's two proposals on the table: one of keeping 1, 2, and 3, and one of splitting 2 and 3 to try and bring the standard of some of the 3 teams up a bit. And that's one of the reasons for tonight is to discuss exactly that. What are people? How do people feel about those 2 options?
It's a subject which we've laid out 2 very superficial arguments on each, and we are happy to accept either argument. We're not as a committee taking a position on it, but there is a good case for both. So the linear, the case is you've got the best 10 teams barring Division 1 all playing each other, therefore it's more competitive. We get that. That's a kind of status quo situation. The alternative with the 2A, 2B, and we haven't just plucked that out of the air, obviously, we've seen that in the Thames Valley League and it works well there, gives the opportunity for ambitious clubs who come up and are good enough to compete and mix with the higher quality teams very early on. We're not saying this one's better than that one. We're saying, here you are, there's 2 options. Now, there's a danger here. We're getting beyond discussing it and starting to argue about it, and I don't think you're likely to change too many people's opinion on it, but it's there, and we'd like you to consider both arguments, not just from your own particular club point of view, but from the point of view of clubs that are coming up through the system, clubs that are perhaps in Cherwell 5 or OCA 1 now and are looking at their potential path to the top, and whether they would be better served by having a season in a Division 2 or Division 3 than a Division 2. or actually if they're good enough, or if they're not good enough, they'll go up and they'll hang around maybe 1 season, 2 seasons, and come down again. We know what it is, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of point in arguing about it. I think we've got to look at the situation for each and decide which one you think is the best one for the league, and whichever one we get a majority vote on is what we'll follow. Now, before we move on, I'm going to go to Ian at Cheersley, who's had his hand up for ages and ages and kind of got butted out a little bit. Ian, did you have a point or a question you wanted to ask? Ian, can you hear me? Cheersley? You need to unmute. Perhaps not then. Ian, you're still on mute.
Just click on mute. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Are we missing a trick here? I'm sorry. Has the league released any document at all, like a position paper or anything? The only thing we've received today on paper is the proposal or the statement from Bristol North Oxford Cricket Club. Has the league released anything, or is this just a lead up to a kind of position paper?
No, we've put it round. It should have been at your club secretary about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago.
All right.
Sorry about that. If you've not got
No, we've missed that somehow. Apologies. I think the debate about structuring at the top of the Chelwell League, possible entry up into the home counties, is not really entirely relevant to joining with the OCA. I played in the OCA a long time ago. How many clubs are we talking about in total? Do we know?
Probably in the OCA.
70.
There's 40 clubs in the OCA.
We would end up, if all the current clubs and teams resume next year from both leagues, we would have at least 175 teams across the divisions, which is almost exactly the same as the Thames Valley, ironically, or coincidentally.
I mean, generally speaking, having played in both leagues over a long time, I would be in favour, as long as, you know, the concerns over grounds and facilities are met to the standards which the CCL currently has.
But I think that's we'll let Jim talk about that one, but I think the point there is it isn't a merger. We've invited them to join us under our playing conditions, terms, ground standards and everything else. And Jim and I have been doing some work, and Jim can expand on ensuring that the ground standards through the tiers are maintained, if not improved.
That might mean some sort of transition period for some of the weaker teams with poorer facilities.
Chelwell teams or OCA teams?
OCAs.
OCA teams wouldn't be placed any higher than their facilities allowed. But we wouldn't demote anybody, as we haven't done in the past, when they don't meet any revised facilities. But there would be OCA teams and clubs would know what their barriers were on entry.
Because I can honestly say that I would feel that the current situation with clubs leaving the OCA over a number of years now, and seems to be an increasing number, will mean the ultimate death of the OCA. And I guess their people must understand that.
That's exactly why we started the conversations. And we've had some really, really constructive meetings with members of the OCA committee. They've been incredibly positive. And I was on the original meetings a few years ago when they were almost over before they'd begun, when we met once in Oxford. They've been incredibly constructive. They've been incredibly positive. They know the risks they're under. They know their clubs want to leave, and they haven't put any barriers in the way. They haven't come along and said, no, we need to play our rules, whatever. They've been very, very positive. So they know, if you like, that this is the best thing for them to continue with all their clubs playing cricket.
Yeah, okay. Apologies if we're a bit behind speed on this, but we haven't seen this document. I don't know why. We'll tackle that. Thanks anyway.
Well, Ian, I've just sent you a message on the chat to say if you just put an email address on the chat. I'll send the document to you now. It's going to be a bit like catch up, but
okay.
See what it was we were talking about. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? For obviously 170 odd teams is a reasonable jump up for Cherwell League to manage. In terms of capacity for communication and governance of that, have you got some ideas of how you might go about
that? Yes.
Yes, we do.
I thought that might be the answer, Dave, but
you want us to elaborate? So yeah, we would be looking to expand the current committee by 4 members, and we would then look at having a regional representative that reported to the committee. So we would assign maybe 4 regional representatives, look after about 20 clubs each, and that would be a conduit that you can talk to and share your views and ideas with.
Okay. And is this going to be an opportunity to get some of the, I guess, some of the county cricket boards more involved with the league? Noting that we have some of the OCB.
Actually, we got a OCB rep here and a Berkshire Cricket Foundation person.
So yeah, just to pick it up from an Oxford cricket point of view, I've been in discussion with Dave and the OCA for a good month or so now around this when this first started coming about. From our point of view, what we want to see is the right level of cricket provided for everybody who wants to play the game across Oxfordshire. So the idea of regionalisation at the lower levels to provide that participation and route into senior cricket is a positive thing from our point. But also then as you move up through the league, providing that quality for those players and clubs who are aspirational to move up. Yes, you've got the final debate on where that point sort of starts to take in from participation into the quality element. But the general premise of what's being proposed here, we're in favour of. The general premise from our point of view is providing clarity to Oxfordshire clubs that there is one league structure within the county that provides them a route from bottom to top, or provides them that ability to find their level wherever their level may well be at that point in time.
Okay, can we go to Sam at Ancient, who's got his hand up, and David, I've seen your hand up as well, so we'll come to you in a second.
Yeah. I was just going to say I'm quite keen on the slightly more flatter structure. I think getting away from this sharp pyramid structure is probably quite a good thing to do, because I think when you get this kind of apex at the top, which I think Premier Leagues, in my opinion, actually cause more damage than they help, because you end up with clubs that pull players in and end up with 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th teams, and you leave other teams in complete disarray, where you keep pulling in more and more players that, with the promise of this kind of higher peak of cricket at the top, which actually then doesn't happen, and you lose them players falling out because they end up in 2nd teams and 3rd teams, and then they sort of fall away. So actually, I think if you can level off that structure a bit, which with maybe a 2As, 2Bs, or however you want to level it, I think it's a good move personally. I also think that, well, I don't know if I've misread it. Is there a couple of situations where you've got leagues of 20, or am I just misreading that document?
No, they're all 10s as per now. There's no proposal to change that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I was going to say, because I think the other thing people are obviously concerned about is if you do start regionalising or whatever you're doing, that you're going to end up with mismatches. I think that's another maybe attitude that needs to move away from, because okay, you might end up with some mismatches in that first season, maybe the second season you might still get a few, but it wouldn't take many seasons for it to level back out again. And realistically, I don't think you're going to end up with enough mismatches during a season to put people off playing cricket, but actually the hopeful drop in journey times would, I think, counteract maybe the odd game here and there where you do end up with a mismatch in those first couple of seasons. But I think moving forward, it should hopefully level itself up.
But that's, to be fair, you can still get mismatches when you're not regionalised. We've had some cracking wins so far. David, you had your hand up. You need to unmute though.
Yeah, I just realised that. Ian. Thank you. Just to echo what Mark said earlier on. We like Challow did cuts right down the bottom end, and our fourth team travelling to Wolverton is not fun. It's difficult to get people to do that. So regionalisation at the bottom, at the lower divisions, is an absolute massive positive for us. We're very strongly in favour of it. I think I would not agree with Sam. I think I prefer the one, and as a club we prefer the 1, 2, 3 at the top, because having umpired around that sort of standard, the difference between the top of 2 and the bottom of 3 at the moment is quite stark. And I think that would be, talk about mismatches. Ground standards is something we get very hung up on ground standards, and I think we need to be not too snobby about it. I think there are some very good grounds in the OCA, and there are some pretty dreadful grounds at quite high levels at the moment in the Cherwell, having done East Oxford on Saturday. But the thing that concerns me more than anything else about this, and there's a lot of very good clubs that you'd have in a heartbeat, but there does seem to be a bit of a stability issue with some of the OCA clubs. And you look at teams moving en masse from one to another, and do they all have? They tend to be smaller clubs. Do they all have junior sections? Do they all have welfare officers? Have they all got that kind of governance that most, if not all, Cherwell clubs have got? And that would be something I think that needs including in the mix.
Sorry, can I just pick up David's point now around ground standards and sort of governance? I think from our point of view as Oxford Cricket, that's where we can support those clubs that are in that position that need to put certain processes in place, but also need to grow around their facilities or their ground standards. And I think that's where having one clear structure within Oxfordshire, it makes it easier for us and the league to work closer together on certain elements and certain points around those areas.
Mark, you've got your non-digital hand up.
So yes, I just echo a lot of what's been said. As you know, I'm a big fan of this, and as I said at DP when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, couple of questions on it. So when this goes to an AGM, and I say having been involved in it before, when it got to the detail is when it fell apart and went to tits. Is this going to be a one single model vote, or is it going to be voting in if Part 1A falls, Part 2B goes on, and so on? Because I can see, even from this conversation, that Sam, knowing Sam from a long time ago, gets the flatter structure. David wants the pyramid structure. Are we going to get to a point where we get to a vote and there's not enough of any one group who wants one structure, so we end up getting to a point where nothing changes? Or is it going to be can we do parts of, do we agree in principle and then we work out the detail below? And I do question whether the league shouldn't be given a little bit of autonomy of, if you agree the overall structure, we sort the detail out.
Well, there's clearly, there has to be an element of that, but I think the point being that we need the clubs to agree that we invite essentially the OCA clubs en masse, and then there actually can be a simple vote on which structure, which only needs a majority of one in favour. So and you can't vote twice. So there has to be a majority of one or the other. So we will get to the point where one of those two structures, if they're the two we put forward, is selected by the clubs.
But it's just the detail that comes under it of whether it's regionalised at this level, that level, whether it's... I mean, we're as a club, we're massively in favour of the Part 3 clause around giving a couple of years for getting to level out, so you do more promotions and relegations in the first couple of years. Absolutely, because if we're basing it on last year's divisions, the players next year will be 2 years older, which means a lot may have retired, but a lot of the 14-year-olds are 16-year-olds, so it's a very different season. Definitely in favour of the 40-40 win-lose at the bottom level. Our players have loved that this year and wouldn't want to go back to a different system. And And I think that bit around the whole voting thing of voting in or out, I think that is the problem that we'll get to, is if it's an all or nothing, we'll end up with a very small majority happy, but a almost majority unhappy, and whether we can do it in stages. And the second part is, do the OCA clubs have to vote in favour of this as well, or do they just leave en masse if it happens? Is it a proposal to their AGM that the OCA is dissolved, so they all come over en bloc, or are we going to end up with having played for Whitney Swifts? Swifts might say yes, Haley say no, West Whitney say no. So, and then you end up with a whole set of clubs in the OCA who, if we're doing this for the good of cricket, end up with no cricket to play at all because there's no one for them to play against.
Yeah, that's exactly what we want to avoid. The conversation we're having with the OCA committee at the moment is such that they want to present it as an en bloc move. It should be no man left behind. Now, if you get the required majority in the OCA, which I think is 2/3, and let's say you get 75% and 25% don't want to come, then that 25%, at that point, we've got to make a decision as to, well, do we take the 75%? Because you've got 3/4 of the league at that point that want to play in the Cherwell League willing to bring them in, and 25% not. Where we would have to, the OCA committee are talking in terms of binding the two, or putting part of their committee into our committee at our invitation, bringing the finances of the OCA to the Cherwell League, because those finances technically belong to the clubs of the OCA. And we would work out an arrangement whereby they sort of buy out of the OCA and buy into the Cherwell League without actually ever seeing the money, so the money would move across. So that requires some detail and probably some lawyers at some point. But the ideal would be an en masse move of all clubs. The problem, and I totally understand what you're saying about, could we do this bit now and this bit later? The reality is, that seems like a great idea. The reality is you can't do it. We either got to do it or not do it.
I know. I spent 3 years trying to get that one through, and it did fall at the.
Yeah.
Everyone agrees it was the right idea. It's just the details that. But it is that bit around the OCA clubs. If we get 75%, which 75%, which might completely scupper your regionalisation in one area. Which then gets those clubs to think,
yeah,
I'm not sure it was the right thing for us to vote for from Cherwell. It's interesting to work through which vote takes place first.
Each individual committee will speak to its individual clubs and come back with a consensus vote from their clubs. So if we're confident that we've got a 66% vote, which is what we need for a constitutional change, and adding 75 teams to the league, I think is pretty unequivocally constitutional. If we've got majority, a 66% majority within the Cherwell League in favour, we'll go back to the OCA and say, right, our door is open. As far as the OCA committee is concerned, they see a 66% vote in the OCA as good enough for an en masse to come across. If some teams choose not to, then they choose not to. But the OCA, as it currently stands, will come into the Cherwell League. And one of the areas that we've been talking to them about are the OCA Cups, which obviously have a lot of history and a lot of prestige. And we want to continue to run those, but under the auspices of the Cherwell League. So all activity within the OCA at that point, unless they start up a breakaway committee for a small league, would come under the auspice of the Cherwell League.
Yeah, not wanting to hog it, but it would be that thing of, do we vote to accept them before they vote to leave, or do they vote to leave before we vote? And it's the same thing of the new clubs coming in.
Well,
they have to resign, or they did have to resign from one league before they go.
Yeah. I think in the first instance,
Mark, we
vote to accept them before they can vote to leave, if you like, because if they vote to leave, not knowing if we're going to accept them,
absolutely, yeah,
it just leaves them dead in the water. So we need to be able to open the door.
And I was thinking the AGM timescales, they're normally consecutive nights.
Yeah, they're on the same night, actually.
Well, can we do one at 7 and one at 8?
Mark, so in our conversations with the OCA, they want to feel welcome into the Chilwell League. They don't want to go and play in at places where they're not welcome. And therefore, you know, if we vote them in, allow them to come and join us, then that will send a message to them that they're welcome to come and join the Chilwell League. And if it's a unanimous vote, then that would send a stronger message.
Totally agree, but I know from history it's the devil's in the detail, and it's that last little bit.
Yeah, well, so that's one of the reasons we spoke to individual clubs initially, get some feedback, and why we're having these Zoom meetings now to get a consensus from the clubs on how we should address it. Now, I know, so I've spent quite some time talking to people over the last 2 or 3 years about this as an idea, a concept, and me and Dave have sat down and discussed it at length. And if you ask 39 clubs, you come up with 39 different variations of it. However, there is a consensus around what we put together, and it's a compromise. So there are things that people won't like, and there are things that people will like. But you have to take into consideration that you need 26 votes to get it through. And if there are more good points that 26 people like, then you'll get a vote. You get a positive vote. So I guess it is political. You're not going to be able to satisfy everybody, because we all are in different sides. From village sides with very small village size, all the way up to clubs from towns with clubs in the home counties and 4 sides and very, very large youth sections. So the disparity between all of our clubs is quite large, and therefore that's where you get different opinions.
David, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to follow up with what David said there. That when we first started off this, we had a whole lot of conditions that we wanted to throw into the mix for one vote. And there was always going to be kind of clubs would disapprove of one thing or another, and that might cause them to vote against it. I think it's a much better structure to actually say, this is the generality, this is for the benefit of cricket, and then give you the choice to vote on individual subjects as after we've got through the basic commitment to it. Because it's really important that for us to encourage the OCA to come join, they have to feel welcome. There has so we would really hope that we've got a 39 club supporting this. If we get kind of 26 for and 13 against, then that's not going to be a really welcoming feeling or a positive approach to the OCA, which is important for this to be a success, in my opinion.
Right. Ian, how about you?
Sorry, can I just add to that before I go to David Hall, who's got his hand up as well? One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we put into this is a kind of fixed 2-year review as well, so that, however, as Mark rightly says, the devil is in the detail, but at some point we have to fill in all the details if we're going to make it work. Now, people may look at some of the details and go, I don't like that one, I don't like that one, I don't like that one. What we would then be asking all of the clubs to do, not just the Cherwell League clubs, but the incoming OCA clubs as well, is give it one full season, and then at the midpoint of the second season, we start to discuss elements of the restructure that we like or that we don't like, and that we perhaps want to be looking to change. Now, there is a mechanism within the Constitution for making these changes at any point in time, but we want to set this up as a 2-year review to say, this is what we did, and no matter what we do, we'll make some mistakes, because you're going to bring 2 organisations together, you're going to be bringing the best part of 3,500 cricketers under one umbrella. There is going to be something in there that isn't working quite as it could or should. So we want to put this review period in so that everybody knows at this point we're going to have another look at the whole thing and say, right, there's some elements that we want to look at again. And after that, it will just go into the normal structure of a constitution, which allows teams to table motions from the floor or lobby committee or so on and so forth, change playing standards, rules, etc. So David Hall, sorry, your hand is up.
Yeah, just one thing that, I'm not muted. One thing that struck me, you take this to the Cherwell AGM, and there's a general vote in favour, and we get the 38 clubs out of 39 vote for it. And you go to the OCA and they get a 50-50 split. You've got 50 clubs who want to join, and 50% of the clubs that want to join, 50% that don't. Is that a bit of a nightmare scenario? You've completely destabilised the OCA. You've got 30 clubs or 30 unhappy teams. Do you take them at restructure on that basis?
No, it wouldn't work on that basis, because the OCA need 2/3 majority to carry that through. So 50% of the clubs would be disappointed and 50% of the clubs would have kept the status quo. But we're not saying if you vote yes to join the Cherwell League, you're automatically in the Cherwell League. We're saying we're taking you all en masse if you as a league vote in favour of that.
So you just take the 14 teams that have already applied?
We would look at the 6 clubs who've applied to join in the correct manner by the correct time scale. Obviously. But we can't, no one else could ring up and say, well, I voted to move, can I come along? Because that isn't how it would work.
Could we not look at that as an option, though?
Well, I think it's quite important that the process has some integrity about it, and the integrity of the process is, if this doesn't work, then we both go back to where we were before. We don't scramble around for a least worst solution. It may be that if it doesn't work and we can't make it go forward, then we have another year of discussion, and at which point, probably as the Cherwell League, we would set down a much stricter set of rules about how it was going to happen, because we don't want the disruption on a yearly basis while they decide what they want to do or not. I'd hesitate to go with it's a once in a lifetime vote, because Nicola Sturgeon tried that and it didn't work out all that well. But from our point of view,
another one coming up.
We are not in this to renegotiate it every year. It is a bit of a one-time offer, and if it's rejected, then we as a committee and as a membership have to decide, is this something we want to entertain every 2 years, every 4 years, or do we just say, no, we're fine, we're going to carry on as we are? And as I said at the beginning, as far as we're concerned, the Cherwell League is not broken. We don't need this, but we see substantial advantages to doing it. So for us, it's a win. It's a win-win, because we either carry on going as we successfully are at the moment, or we get to add some extra bits to it. David?
Yeah, sorry, just probably a bit of a silly question, but we vote for this as the Cherwell League and say yes, we get 2/3, or let's say we get 99%, and the OCA vote and they get 99%. What's the time scale? When are these games going to start?
2021 season.
That's a lot of work in a very short space of time.
Quite a lot of the work has already been done in a sort of if this then that. So administratively, we're reasonably confident. The thinking originally was it would be rather rude to have a season where we didn't play any meaningful competitive cricket and then come back and say, well, we'd like another year to discuss what we do going forward. This was the season to do it, because we don't have to wait to the end of the season to rank our clubs, etc., etc. We do believe it's feasible, and there is a will on both committees to make it happen for 2021.
I got one question, one comment to David Hall. He said that the vote would go at the AGM. We'd have a special general meeting before the AGM. We wouldn't want to wait until November. If it doesn't go through, we would be voting on whether the clubs, the OCA clubs that have already applied to join the Cherwell League, would be voted in or not.
Dave, would that be voting on the current rules in terms of the 6 that apply? But do we also vote?
Yeah.
Of the new
So we're looking. Okay. So from timing perspective, because Dave Clapton brought it up, timing perspective, we will want to vote on whether we accept the OCA clubs en masse before our AGM. It would be nice if we could get it done in September, because there's a lot of work to be done. But if we don't, then it will be before our AGM. If the vote doesn't go through, then at the AGM we would be following the same procedures, so nothing had happened, and we would be proposing the clubs that had applied in the normal time frame and with regards to our regulations, whether they came into the league or not.
All right, Ian, could I dive in? Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
Peter.
So from our perspective, from Dinton's perspective, we're generally supportive of the merger, which I suspect is what you're hoping to hear from all of us here. I think in terms of the regionalisation, we would be supportive of as much regionalisation as possible. I think that's better for cricket from the point of view of participation. I think at this stage, as clubs, we shouldn't get too hung up about that decision because, as we've seen this year, with no disrespect to Gary, but it can be relatively easily changed if we were to change our mind, like you said, in 2 years' time, or even less if we decided it wasn't working. So I think we should be careful not to make to get people too hung up on that initial structure because it will need some working and refining over time.
Yeah.
And it's just on that, it's fair to say that it's impossible to regionalise every match, as we said earlier. And it may be that needs, if 3 teams come down all from one particular part of the region or of the whole area, you might want to put them in a similar division. So there may be some cross-division movement as well to try and minimise the amount of travelling without being able to reduce it to nothing.
Which is, again,
like I say, personally, I'd support just regionalising as much as possible. But I appreciate other people have other points of views, and they're perfectly valid. And I think we should just work with it and see what eventually works. So, like I said, personally, I'm not too. And as a club, I don't think we would be too concerned either way. The process around AGMs and SGMs, I think, is going to be really tricky. But again, I'm not sure how much the clubs can help you with that, really. And like I say, apart from saying that we're supportive at this stage, I'm not sure how much we can help with that. But I think it's going to be very difficult. The one thing which we as a club, Dinton, would be very keen on, and I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to confirm is would this impact our relationship with the Home Counties League at all, or would the Cherwell's relationship just maintain only with more clubs in it?
This was one of the reasons that we didn't want to make an official merger of the 2 leagues, but actually bring the OCA into the Cherwell. So there is no reason, therefore, for the home counties to change their attitude towards the Cherwell League, and that's the process that we've gone on. I know Brian Standish has had a conversation with Martin Phillips, and there's certainly no concern being expressed from the home counties that it would change their relationship with the Cherwell League. So
I'm not sure we should allow the Home Counties Premier League to dictate what happens in leagues below it.
Well, there's that as well.
They do only provide cricket for 20 teams. That's
No, but we also don't want to lose our ability to qualify for the Home Counties League because we've agreed to this merger. That's the point I'm making. Not that the Home Counties League should be telling us what happens in Division 3 or 4.
There is no discernible logic to the home county saying, oh well, now that you've got another 80 teams below Division 3, we don't think we can bring you in anymore. As far as we're concerned, we can't see any reason why that would change anything.
No, that's not the Home Counties' decision. That's the decision about who gets into the Premier League is not theirs. It's from above them.
DCB.
Yeah.
And that position won't change, is all I'm trying to clarify. And I think you've said yes, but is that, are we certain about that, or is that an assumption?
I'd be 99.9% certain it's not their show.
From an ECB point of view, they're not going to ask the home counties or give them permission to change that. They will want them to have that feeder and provide that pathway from the most grassroots up to the top of the amateur game.
But no one's had that conversation, and that's not confirmed. That is an assumption. Although I think it's a pretty.
We've had a steer from the cricket boards, the county cricket boards that we are moving in the right direction, not in the wrong direction.
I think it'd be quite an easy discussion to have with someone tomorrow. Speak to Paul Bedford, and yeah, there's no way the Premier League could say it's like when the Hertfordshire teams came out. That wasn't the Premier League's decision; it was a decision by the Hertfordshire League to take their teams back in and set their own Premier League up. The Premier League don't have a say-so on anything other than their own cricket.
My understanding is that if this goes through, it'll be more in thinking with the ECB's thinking anyway.
But no one's had that conversation with the HCPL, and you're suggesting that we do before we vote on this, right? Is that what someone just said?
No, I mean, we can certainly have that conversation. As I say, we have had a conversation with Martin Phillips, who's the chairman of the HCPCL, and his initial reaction was that he was in favour of the merger, although he had 1 or 2 points he wanted to bring up. So he certainly didn't bring, but I take your point, and we can expressly ask the question. If this merger goes ahead, we are confident that you will not be changing or trying to change anything in terms of qualifying, and then we can come back to you and say we've expressly asked the question and we've got the answer.
Yeah, and as long as that can just be confirmed by the HCPL, then
yeah,
then brilliant.
We can do that.
Positive thing, but if there are any reservations from them for whatever reason they might be, then clubs like ours might.
You need to know. No, absolutely.
And we might prefer to retain the status quo.
Yeah.
The only other point I had in mind, and it probably wouldn't affect our position on any sort of vote, but I'm just more intrigued. What's the position of OCA's committee on this? Are they, because presumably a lot of them are going to step away and not have a role on a league committee after this merger? Is this turkeys voting for Christmas, or are they happy, you know, to stand down or to be merged within the Cherwell committee? How will the two committees integrate?
We haven't gone to the final level of detail on that, but we have spoken with the whole OCA committee on a Zoom forum, and in general, their committee are very positive about the move in terms of how it goes for cricket. We've made it clear that we would be looking at an expanded committee within the Cherwell League, but certainly not both committees coming together. We'd be looking for about 4 members. We haven't gone into how they individually feel about that, but we've made it clear that's our standpoint at the moment, and that's what we would expect to happen.
Okay.
Sam.
It's just going back. I'm finding I'm slightly confused in terms of the regionalisation and allowing teams to progress quickly. I absolutely want teams to progress quickly. My concern is, which is one of the reasons we objected to that, is only having one team promoted from a tier. Particularly we've lost this year through COVID, and I think one of the things we'd certainly like to see is more promotion and relegation to speed this process up for progressive clubs, whatever level. And my fear is that if we regionalise at a high level, as you said, it's arbitrary done, so you'll have teams from, if it's voted to choose from divisions 2 and 3 merging, so we have a tier 2, A and B. As it stands, only one team get promoted from either of those. I think you could find that you maybe had 2 or 3 progressive clubs in the same tier. I don't see how this allows for that. Whereas if there's the current flatter structure and you allowed more promotion and relegation, I could see that happening far more quickly. That's.
I think. I mean, it's still 2 up to all intents and purposes, whether they come from 2 equal divisions or 2 or 1 division.
With all due respect, Gary, it's only 1 from a league of 10.
Yes.
And so that,
okay.
This is my point, in that if you arbitrarily create those 2 divisions of 10, you could have a division of 10 with the 4 best sides in by chance or just by the way you've done it?
You could, but that happens now. But I think the point I was trying to make is the evidence we have, and there's a number of clubs on here tonight who will hopefully back that up, is whenever we've promoted because of necessity, because teams like Cublington have dropped out, the team that's been promoted from 3rd position has invariably and almost without any exception struggled. So I'll accept that, there's often 2 better sides in the league, but the team that's 3rd that's come up, and Didcot Falls were a really good example of that last year. They really, really struggled. So whether it's it's either 2 from 10 and 2 from 10 or 2 from 20, but it's the same mix. If you put too many more in than that, you promote people above their ability, and you probably relegate people above their ability as well.
Yeah. So by your same argument, though, by mixing teams from Division 2 and Division 3, you've just contradicted yourself. If that, I'm not trying to be awkward here. I'm just trying to think in terms of I can't get my head around why we're restructuring the top.
Well, that's exactly why there are 2 proposals, and we've said we're neutral on those. They're the 2 things that have been suggested to us in all the discussions. Some will be in favour of one, some will be in favour of the other. And we get that, and then that's up to the clubs to decide which they prefer. And there'll be winners and losers, but there's winners and losers in every vote.
If you've got that straight divisions, then it's as it is for the top 20 or 30 teams. What we're talking about is, as someone mentioned earlier, around what's better for the next 70 teams, not the top 20.
Yeah, Mark, if you leave it as status quo, you don't necessarily get the votes from the people below it. So
you go with, we'll have the top 2 divisions as a single division, and from current Division 3 downwards, it becomes a tiered structure. We're offering more for more people because those top clubs are predominantly the same all the time.
Yeah, that doesn't actually work with the numbers that we have, unfortunately.
The maths doesn't work because we have looked at that as well. The maths doesn't work on that one.
We've been around several versions.
Should we do it based on maths?
Well, because it has to work. It has to work. I mean, it has to be based. There has to be some logic. It has to work. If it doesn't work because the right number of teams to fulfil that structure, then it doesn't work. When you call it maths, you can call it whatever you like. But if it doesn't work from a practical point of view, with that many teams, with that structure, then there's no point in proposing it. We've been through all of these scenarios for weeks and weeks now, and we also feel there's probably more similarity between 4 and 5, potentially, rather than putting some of those other divisions together. But it doesn't work with the number of clubs and teams we have.
The issue the reason we bring the maths in is because if we said, well, actually the ideal is 1, 2, 3A, 3B, well, that satisfies about 30 clubs at the top end and produce utter carnage in the bottom divisions, because the bottom divisions will be 6, 7, 5, or 15, 13, 14, and not getting cricket every week. And suddenly there's a whole host of teams not getting the cricket they should be getting because we wanted a slightly more rounded, perfect structure at the top. So what we've done here is we've said the top 50 teams are up for debate in terms of structure and how those 5 divisions work. But below that, we've got 120 teams for whom we can regionalise with the numbers that we have and produce good, solid leagues. Still, the bottom teams, in some cases, might have 11 or 12, might have 9. But that's always been the case in the bottom league because numbers never fit.
Well, I think that with those bottom teams, we all know that a club's 3rd team doesn't necessarily have the same 11 players for 2 weeks running at any point in the season.
No, true.
And concessions come in, everything else. I think it's not quite irrelevant at the bottom, but whether it is a group of 11 that play each other 1.5 times, or whether it's a group of 8 that play each other 2.5 times, it's almost irrelevant if we're looking to provide cricket for those people.
Well, that's right. And as Ian said, we don't know because it's 175 at last count, but we've already had one application for another team from an existing club, so it might be 176. The bottom divisions will be not necessarily all of 10, but there'll be 9 or 11 or something, and we'll
I really don't think that matters for teams down there.
Well, I think it matters that you've joined a league. There's 18 weeks. You ideally want to play 18 games.
Yeah, there's playing 18 games and there's playing nine teams home and away. Yeah. And it's playing 18 games at the bottom end, not playing 9 teams home and away.
But that's what we've always strived to do. You can obviously only do that with an even number. You can't do an odd number. But that's what we've always strived to do. This season, Division 10 was supposed to be 12, with everybody playing 18 games. So that's exactly what we'll continue to do. And yes, you don't play everybody twice. Well, it doesn't really matter, does it? But you do play 18 games. So as long as there's even numbers, that's what will happen.
But whatever number you get in the bottom divisions, you can get 18 weeks worth of games out of it, even if you play your most local team 4 times.
Yeah,
I just don't think we should be dictated by.
It's not as simple as that.
I can see where you're coming from, Mark, but at the same time, if you don't mind saying so, I think that's a slightly condescending viewpoint that the bottom 4 divisions don't matter, as long as the top 3 divisions get exactly the tweaked version that they want.
No, I'd never say, having spent most of my playing career in the bottom divisions, I'd never say they don't matter. I think the format that they play is less important in terms of it's the same team home and away. Do you actually find, because if you look at what, and this happened with High Wycombe told us a few years ago, they would rather their 4th team didn't get promoted because they want their players to go up, not the team. And I know what happens is a good 3rd team has a good year, gets promoted, and then finds themselves in a much higher division, because we know the difference between 10 and 9 or 9 and 8 can be quite big, because you're talking of 20 teams across clubs, and that team goes up. The players have gone up to the seconds. They've got a new set of youngsters comes in, and they get smashed every week and get relegated. Those players learn again next year and they get better and go up, and you get those lower teams. I'd never say they don't matter. But I think the way that those divisions, it's almost like it's just a fixture bureau for those teams. I
play in those divisions. I play in those divisions, and I find that really condescending. We play properly. Yes, we've got youngsters who improve, and if we go up with them, then brilliant. And if they go up to the 1st team, like some have done this year, that's brilliant as well. But I don't think it's as simple as that. It's still proper cricket, and as much as we can arrange proper cricket with more clubs and more grounds to visit, hopefully closer to home, then that's a good thing.
I think what we're trying to achieve is a structure that everybody can look at and say, yeah, we're being catered for that. And what we also want to do, and I'll come back to the point I made earlier about the 2-year review, is that's probably the time to say, this is not working for our top 3 divisions, or it's not working for our bottom divisions, and we have to look to restructure. But given the 2 options that are on the table currently for the top 3 divisions, you've got one option which we've been running with forever, and you've got another option which the Thames Valley League have been running with forever. These are not random ideas that we've just plucked out of the air. These are the 2 kind of known and trusted versions of how you run your top 3 divisions across the whole of Bucks, Berkshire, Middlesex, and so on. So there has to be something
Gloucester
to be said to say, well, these are the two structures that we've seen work. We've got an opportunity here to choose between them, and there's only so many ways you can make a wheel. There's no need to reinvent it. It works. And it works for us at the moment, and it works for the Thames Valley at the moment. So whichever way out it comes, it's not going to be a terrible thing. But coming back to Sam Sanson's point about the number of promotions and relegations, when you talk about why not, and I understand the idea that more promotions and relegations are good to help sort out the leagues, but actually we don't need to sort out the top 3 divisions, because we're not introducing any new teams there. The idea of 3 up, 3 down in the lower leagues was there to allow for a more natural remedy to misplacement of teams, which is bound to happen. And not because we've got the teams wrong. We know, all of us know, that any individual team in one particular year will be very strong, and the next year they will not be very strong because of the individual circumstances around that club. So we can't really say, well, that's a strong club, therefore they should be there, because their thirds are always strong, because their thirds might not be strong next year. There'll be a whole load of other factors that will impact on that. But we do feel that just to give everyone the reassurance that if they are in the wrong place, it's not going to take them too long to get in the right place. extra promotions and relegations in the lower divisions give us an opportunity for natural remedies. In the higher divisions, I'm all right with you having to win Division 2 to get into Division 1. Don't have a problem with that. You know, if you're going to get into Division 1, you need to be the best team in the division that you're playing in. But as I say, we are not taking a position here and asking you to support it. We're saying these are the two options that are available. You've got loads of experience of one. You can see what happens in the Thames Valley League in the other. What do you think? It's an opportunity for change. If the clubs say we don't want to change, fine, we won't change.
It almost feels like there's a two-speed question here, and the first question is: should you guys continue the conversations with OCA about them coming across en masse? And from Cumberland's point of view, the answer to that is yes. And then there's a second speed question, which is what exactly is that structure, which I guess seems to have been most of the conversation. And from Cumberland's point of view, we would say regionalise as high as you possibly can. That would be our view. It's not the view that's shared by everybody tonight. But I guess in some ways that's almost a second speed question. And so the question is should we continue these conversations? The answer is absolutely yes. Let's get this done. And then almost the structure bit could almost be a secondary question. I'd hate for this to all fall over because we're arguing about is there a 1, a 2A, a 2B, or a 1, a 2, a 3. You know, if that means it doesn't happen, then that sounds to me to be a disaster.
We would.
I think that's a good question, isn't it? Would anyone change their opinion about the merger depending on the league structure? And would anyone say, yes, I'd agree to this merger as long as Division 2 is regionalised? But if Division 2 isn't regionalised, I'm not going to agree to the merger. I doubt whether he's sort of in that camp, is there?
Yeah, so Peter, we've had exactly that conversation within Cumberland, and the answer is we would prefer the regionalise as high as possible. But if that means it doesn't happen, don't do that. We just want it to happen.
Okay.
Because I always like to play devil's advocate, I've heard 4 keepers say they want to regionalise as high as possible. What you're actually saying is we're going to regionalise division
as low as possible.
We're going to regionalise Division 1, are we?
No.
I don't know.
But that's a good point.
Just the question, isn't it?
We need to be careful to not dilute the standards, and regionalisation potentially does that at the higher level.
I think just to go back on, and I'm not going to go around the same argument, but at all levels, we need to balance regionalisation against competitiveness. Now, at the very top levels, competitiveness will take a much bigger chunk of it. But that doesn't mean that there won't be regionalisation. If there's an obvious candidate for saying, well, this one should be over there and this one should be over there because that's going to save 2 teams a 60-mile trip, then we'll do that. As you go further down, regionalisation becomes, I think, more of a catalyst than competitiveness. But at the same time, we don't want this team playing this team because they're 5 minutes apart when we know that they're actually 5 divisions apart. That's senseless as well. So coming back to David's point, yes, what we want first and foremost is a mandate to have the discussions with a positive view to making it happen. The other debate, we still want to have it because in the back of our minds, we want to have a good idea of what we're going forward. With the top 3 divisions, actually, it's much less relevant to the merger in the sense of the OCA because there won't be any OCA teams in those top 3 divisions when we bring the two leagues together. So it's not a factor in terms of how we deal with them. It only becomes a factor if we do have clubs who say, well, I'm not voting for it if it's 1, 2A, 2B, or I'm not voting for it if it's 1, 2, 3. And hopefully, most clubs would be able to say, well, we prefer it that way, but we're not going to stop it just because of that. And we've got a structure, or we've got a review in place in 2 years where we can come back to it and say, well, clearly we've got every year 5 teams miles away from the other 5 teams in 2A, 2B, or we've got teams coming up and going straight through 3 and 2, and that's given us evidence that actually we should be going the other way to the way we've gone. So the first point is, yes, we're looking for a mandate from the clubs, and we want the clubs to let us know that this is something they want us to do or they don't want us to do. If you don't want us to do it, that's fine too. We then sit down with the OCA, and at that point we have to be mindful of their requirements, because they will have some thoughts about it as well, and would then bring those back, and all the clubs would see a finished final proposal that they would be asked to vote on before they were before we suddenly merged the two leagues and then told you what was going to happen afterwards. Anyone got any other areas unsure about? Ajit?
Yeah. Broadly speaking, I think from the discussions today, we've heard that we want to carry on talking to the OCA. Why don't we look at the fact that we just vote on whether we want to the merger or them joining the OCA joining the Cherwell League, and then leave the decision as to which way we organise the actual league itself to the committee, because otherwise what we will be doing is probably spending 2 or 3 months trying to get to that point, only to find that it's just going to delay everything for the coming season.
Well, we'd be very happy with that mandate. But we would also like to have a feel for what clubs want.
Sure. By all means, discuss it at a number of meetings. But I think clubs should trust the committee to make the right decision, because that will speed the process, whichever way we decide to vote. So the idea would be to vote whether we want the merger or them joining us, and then leave the detail to the committee.
Ian, I'm from Brackley. I'd just like to say I completely agree with that as well. I think how we slice the cake, to be completely honest, isn't of a huge concern. I think we should crack on and do it. And talking from a club that hopefully we're in a bracket from the teams that we've played this year and the previous year where we've got an up-and-coming first team, the only concern for us would be the difference in the amount of leagues between our first and second team. We've already got a 5-division gap. Do we want that to increase? Well, I guess as long as the second team's getting better and moving up, like you were saying, with more teams going up and down, that should even itself out anyway. But I'd be more than happy to go along with that as well. You know, we want the OCA to join as well, and how it's sliced up and leagued isn't overly relevant to us.
Okay.
I would also say as well that you have to remember that the people in this meeting and the people in the next meeting as well are the people that maybe, I say without trivializing, maybe care a little bit more or have been put forward as that representative for your club. But you have to remember there are a lot of people, probably 85%, 90%, that have got really do not care what structure the league is. A lot of them turn up, probably don't even know what the structure is. A lot of them wouldn't know what division they were in if you asked them. So it's worth bearing that in mind, that although we want to get it right for the people that do care, that there are some minutia that you really don't need to necessarily worry about, in terms of that when you've got people turning up for cricket, that's the main thing, especially like if you've got kids that are turning up to play, you know, they don't care what's happening, what structure we've got from Division 1, 2 and 3 and how it's been split out. I know there are people that do, but it's a consideration on both sides that is, we want to get to an end goal rather than necessarily...
Those same kids, Sam, their mum probably does care if she's got to drive an hour and a half to drop them off at cricket and then another hour and a half to come fetch them again.
If he's playing in the top division,
how many hours out of her day, so they may not care whether they're in Div 10 or Div 3, but they do care, or at least their mum cares, how far she's got to go to drop them off and then pick them up again. And if that is getting over an hour, then they're going to stop playing cricket, or they're just going to play at school.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're only talking about the top divisions. If they're playing in Division 2 or 2A or 2B or 3, then I think they're past that point where I'm going to give up because I'm travelling, and that's where the competitive nature's really kicked in. I think Sam made a good point. I mean, we're talking about having roughly 175 teams, and the debate seems to be around 20 of them.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I'd echo that point entirely. We had a game on Sunday, and I had a 13-year-old playing in the team, and we came off at the end, and he said, "Did we win?" And I said, "Did you have a good time?" And he said, "Yeah, I really enjoyed it." I said, "Well, then it doesn't really matter, does it?" But yeah, I totally take that point on board. But you know, we as the representatives of the clubs are charged with doing this and trying to get it as right as we can. Ian.
Yeah, it just seems to me that the principle is what we're taking at the moment, and the structure and other important details like that are solved later. But if the OCA does not get taken into the CCL, then I could see cricket dying in a lot of villages, certainly in West Oxfordshire. And cricket is losing teams, clubs all over the place at the moment. So this, for me, is an important principle, really, that if the two leagues agree to the proposal, then it should get our full support, because it will keep cricket going in a lot of places where otherwise it would just die.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that's where Ian started from, that we think it will strengthen the overall ability for clubs and teams to be full of 11 players every week, because they'll be in a solid structure, hopefully with less travelling at the lower points, which is typically where teams struggle, but it will benefit everybody because it provides them an environment to play cricket in.
Okay. Anyone else like to take us in any other directions, or anything we haven't covered? Anything you're not sure about?
Can I just say something? Sorry, Dave Binnings here. I haven't put my name on. I apologise for coming in late. Is there there needs to be some thought about when you move down to the lower divisions, because Abingdon provide 4 teams, and over the COVID period, we've actually put out 5 teams at some weekends. The business of how you will integrate and use grounds, because as soon as you come down to divisions, will we get, or the lower divisions, will we have problems where all of a sudden teams 3 and 4 are at home or away and that sort of thing?
No, we'll work the fixtures out, Sam, as we always do, to make sure home and aways work. There are some OCA clubs who share with 13 Chilwell League clubs, but we already have to make sure that they're not both playing on the same day. So there'll be no change there.
But once you've got 170 teams, you can see the logistical problems of being able to maintain that sort of thing.
Yes, it's more work, but it's, you know, Thames Valley manage it every year. It will get done in exactly the same way as it does now.
Right. Thank you.
I'm tempted to say we've exhausted the subject matter, unless anyone, as I say, this is the time to get it out if you've got something to put out. But
can I just ask one question, Ian, if I may? I started off with 3 pages of notes. I've now got 13, so I'm just going to keep it very brief. Purely selfish Banbury hat on here. Are home counties second teams going to be barred from playing in the top division?
Not
What's the thought on that?
No.
No. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Did that win your vote, Neil?
No. But it was a good answer and an honest one, and do me.
You managed to fill 13 pages with that question.
I've got so many questions here. I'm not going to start because I'll be just rambling. And my view, my personal view, is I'm not a fan of regional cricket. I'm just not. I want to play at nice grounds, not near grounds. I really do. However, having listened to everybody tonight, there's been a lot of real good stuff said tonight. There is absolutely a case for it in the lower divisions. There's no, even I will agree with that. But as I understand it tonight, there's only going to be one, for want of a better word, open division, which will be the top one, and all the rest are going to be split. And we're certainly not for that. We think maybe Divs 4 and upwards should be pretty much as they are. Split it under that, fine. But it's too high, the split. I think the guys from Cumnor are the exact opposite to what Banbury are. They want the split or the tiering high up the league. We don't. We want it a lot further down. But that's, that's stuff to be sorted out.
We think the split at 4 works with the stronger OCA teams in it. It doesn't work.
I'm not so sure about that, Gary. I'm not so sure. If you think
we'll see, obviously, but that's the rationale behind that piece. We know there's no OCA teams coming in higher than that. They're probably Division 5 sides these days. We've taken the best ones over the last few years.
Absolutely, they are, Gary. Look at Chalbury, who were the last OCA side who won their league comfortably to come into our league, and they only stayed up in Division 4 by the skin of their teeth last year. So that tells me that the OCA sides are 5 and downwards. Sure.
Yeah, and that's exactly where if we don't vote for this, when we've got a proposal at the AGM for those 6 clubs, they will be at Division 5 and lower. That's absolutely right.
Yeah, no, that's good. But
having 4 and 5 together does allow some of those clubs the chance to strengthen. And typically those OCA teams do strengthen when they come into the Cherwell League. They get players back from Cherwell League clubs where they've gone to play because they wanted to play Cherwell League cricket. Now they can go home and do it. So I'd expect there'll be a slight evening out as well.
Yeah, of course they will. Yeah.
But you're right, the top is the top. I mean, we're not changing that. We might restructure it slightly, but it's the same clubs.
Yeah, we're not a fan of this Division 1 and then Division 2 A and B. No, that's something we're certainly not. We ain't going to vote for that. We're really not. That's just not something. I know we're like Roche. Roche, he's a club that's at one end of the county. We're in the poor, trodden north of the county, and so regional cricket. You'd think it'd be something we would be really in favour of, but no. As I said, we want to play at the nice grounds, not the near ones. Unless if the near
some
ones.
Of the near ones are the nice ones. Some of the further ones away may not be the same.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful what I say.
We have to go and travel to 20 though, Neil.
Well, you do. And
who wants to play there?
Yeah, I do. It's the best wicket in the league. There you go. But guys, there's going to be. What if some clubs don't want this? And there will be some. Maybe 10 or 12 or so. Maybe the clubs at the top end, the bigger clubs. That could be an issue there. I mean, we want quality. We want absolute. I want these teams in the top divisions to be even vetted. I think there are teams in our top 3 leagues who actually don't even train, really. And there's clubs that have got no ambition to be a home counties club. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're in those top 3 leagues, you don't want to be in home counties. See ya, as far as I'm concerned. Go and play in an intermediate section and find your level. Let's vet some of the teams we've got at the top end. And if we're going to do a complete rejig, which is most likely here, let's jig that as well. I mean, let's get the size in there that, that have got ambition, like Gary said earlier, that are go ahead, that have got ambition, that have got youth setups, they've got coaching, they've got winter coaching. Let's have those elite ones at the top end, which is great. And there'll be some clubs in the middle that are not sure, and then there'll be plenty, including a lot of the OCA sides. It'll be, it'll be fantastic for them to come in the lower reaches, if you like. And somebody said about the grounds. Oh, we've got a lot of grounds in Cherwell, a lot of pitches in Cherwell League. They're not very good, if we're honest about it. And we've got our own house in order to a point, I think. And anyway, I've got 30.
Yeah, do you think this push for quality and stuff actually does more damage than it does good? Because
how can that do good? How can that not do good?
Well, because what players of quality are playing in the Cherwell League? They've already gone. They're already playing for county teams.
We're not talking about players of quality. We're talking about facilities of quality, right? Anyway.
Well, facilities is a different matter. But if you're talking about clubs and people training, well, that doesn't really make any difference to me. I think it does more damage than good for some clubs to be. Where you talk about leagues that are focused on quality, it should be about inclusion and people playing rather than.
Well, that was my point. That's it. That's exactly my point. If teams are in our top three divisions, and I bet there are clubs that don't train in the top three divisions, probably. And surely they should be. Surely those clubs are the ones that have got aspirations to play home counties cricket. If not, frankly, what are they doing in there? Really? What are they doing?
That's what a league structure is about. That you can you can find your level and be a really good Division 2 team. And what I would want to see is the route that Thames Valley took a couple of years ago, where they set up their entry criteria to exclude certain teams they didn't like.
Didn't like on what grounds, Rochi?
To enter the Thames Valley League, you have to have a 2-bay artificial net system. Now, who on a Saturday uses that?
Well, nobody.
But that was
criteria.
criteria.
Their nets closed on a Saturday, they shouldn't be using them at all.
Well, exactly, but it kept certain
Why
clubs
would you
out.
stop a club playing at the level they've earned the right to play at?
Absolutely.
Don't do on a Wednesday evening.
Yeah.
Barking mad.
Guys, we've all got different opinions on this, haven't we?
But you've got to also bear in mind that there are some clubs, and I mean, one of them where our ground isn't big enough to play in home counties, but that doesn't mean it's not big enough to play in Division 3. And certainly 2 years ago, we were quite successful in Division 3, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be playing there just because we can't play in home counties.
Well, no, Gary, no, you're right. I mean,
in Division 1, maybe, but not any lower than that.
Well,
I
think we've got a lot of grounds aren't good enough in the top three divisions, in my view, and we need to address them. We really do. There's a lot of that needs doing, in my opinion. And
how would you address it? By banning them from playing, or by maybe offering them financial support or expertise, or would you just ban them from playing cricket?
No, you'd encourage them to improve it.
You can't make it bigger.
I think the guy from Brackley was on earlier. Sorry, I didn't catch his name, but
Mickey Lowe.
Hi, Mike. All right, mate. 2 years ago, they were nearly being ousted from the league, and they, as he's just said, have got their house in order with their ground. They've gone away. They've done what they had to do, and I can vouch at first hand, having played against them 3 years. They're an extremely good side, and fair play to them. They're a go-ahead. They were a club that were on their knees, and that probably wouldn't mind me saying that 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and they've absolutely turned it around and whoosh.
Because they had the opportunity. Because they had the opportunity, and if you banned them from those divisions, you've denied them that opportunity. So you have to work both ways.
I'm not saying about banning anybody from anything. We've got to get facilities that I think we have at the top end.
You're saying stop people playing at a higher level on the basis of their facilities. Okay, it's not banning, but it's blocking. How's that helping?
But the clubs aren't going into if their facilities aren't good enough, they won't be allowed into the home counties Premier League.
Yeah, but that shouldn't stop you playing Division 3 of the Cherwell League. Might stop you playing in Division. It might ultimately stop you playing in Division 1, but that's our decision, not the home counties decision.
Exactly.
But there are also teams. There's also teams in the Premier League, which we all know wouldn't have got in there if they weren't already in there, but they couldn't throw them out.
Yeah.
And they're not on this one because their name begins with a letter that's on tomorrow night.
Oh, Rochi, you bottled out by that, didn't you? Can't you go on there tomorrow night and say it again tomorrow?
No, we're on the C, so we're on the first one.
There is nothing wrong with wanting facilities that we've got to improve at the high end.
No, absolutely not.
What's wrong? Tell me what's wrong with that. That's all.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And the Cherwell League for the last 4 seasons has been trying to encourage clubs as much as possible to improve their facilities to a level that is appropriate to the level of cricket they're playing in. I think what we have to remember is we are community cricket, but we are community cricket going from quite a high level to quite a low level. And we have to produce, our primary objective is to get as many people playing cricket as we possibly can. And there will be different things that we'll put in place at the very high levels because we want Cherwell League clubs to represent the league well. But we've also got to bear in mind that we've got a lot of players that we want to make sure cricket is available for. And if they're good enough, I think they should go high enough. But in that huge structure, you're also going to get a wide variety of opinions, which we've already seen here tonight, and I think they're all valid, and much of it is already on the committee's agenda, and we're making steps to improve facilities wherever we can, and to improve the cricket experience for everybody, from potential home counties player to 14-year-old coming out of junior cricket, getting his first crack at playing against men. And it's a broad church. It's a broad church that we've got to try and accommodate all of. So yeah, I take your point, Neil. Absolutely.
Thanks, Ian.
And
thanks for letting me speak. Thank you.
not at all.
Can I?
Megas off his long run.
Oh, he's sledging the batsman there.
Hey, Dave, I'm not even on the blocks yet, mate.
Can I just come in and just say, like, you know, it's very easy. You said the broad church is the most important thing for me in there, because, you know, there's several clubs in the league, and I know one of them have got historical good fortune to be able to have excellent facilities, which aren't anything to do with what's happened in the members in the last 25 years. You know, there are other clubs that are really aspiring and want to improve, you know, and are putting it in, but they're coming from such a low level. And should you hold back a really aspiring cricket club just because they weren't given a nice, lovely cricket ground by a building company 25 years ago? You know, we have to you know, assess each club on its own merits from its own position it's starting from.
I'll take up that point if I can, because as Abingdon are often falling foul of the CL because of our facilities. But it wouldn't matter if we had £1 million in the bank. We're just totally restricted on what we can do on the ground that we have. So we might have all the aspirations in the world, but we can't improve our facilities anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not practical. Well, I say it's not possible, let alone practical, because of the way the ground is. It's a floodplain, and we're just stymied all the time if we want to move on further in that direction.
Okay, gentlemen, I don't want to break the party up, and you know, you're welcome to stay on this call as long as you like. But I would like to just, I mean, I think we've got a good feel for what you're saying, but I would just like to kind of confirm a sort of yay or nay from your club to the idea that we progress conversations with the OCA with a view to bringing in the 75 OCA clubs. So I'm going to go from top left on my screen, which means Simon can put his thumb down because he's my top left. Sam Sansom. Yep, great, thank you. Ian Cheersley.
Yeah, go for it.
Excellent. Sam Ancient. Fantastic. David Hall. Didcot.
Yeah, Didcot, yeah.
David Clapton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peter Cooling, who we haven't heard from all night.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're in favour.
Good. East Oxford in favour. Good. Neil.
I haven't really got a mandate from the club to. I think
it was a thumb up or down, Megas.
It's not. Not sure.
Fence.
Okay.
On that fence.
Yes, with massive load of caveats.
Okay, we'll take that. Thank you, David Bentley.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're raising your thumb, I can't see it because your camera's low. Mikey? Yeah, excellent. Dave Freeman?
Yes.
Fantastic. Mark? Great. Peter? Ah, we've got video at last. Bob?
Yep.
Yep, excellent. And Ryan? Who's not on video?
Not here.
Or not here? Anyone know who Ryan?
Ryan's BNOC. So Sammy's.
Oh, okay. Just
representing us.
quietly. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So we're pretty much unanimous then, with one big pile of caveats coming from the northwest. But we can we'll come back and discuss those. The other one, and I don't need to argue about it, but we'd just like to get a feel for your preference between 1, 2A, 2B and 1, 2, 3. So going round again, Simon.
You hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear you?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Sam Sansom.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Ian Tuesley.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Sam Incham.
I'm more of a 2A,
2A,
2B type.
David Hall.
1, 2, 3.
David Clapton.
2A, 2B.
2A, 2B. Peter Cooling.
1, 2, 3.
East Oxford. Minute. You're on mute.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
I got me, yeah?
I got you. Yeah, thank you. Neil.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, Ian, sorry.
Was that on the question sheet?
Well, no.
Dave Billingsley.
2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Ajit appears to have disappeared.
You can ask Ashley.
I'm not here to represent Charlbury tonight. I'll have to go back to Ajit for you on that one.
Okay. Mikey?
We're not really bothered, to be honest.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, or either or. Yeah, that's fine.
Dave Freeman.
Well, I'm with Megas on a 1, 2, 3, 4, but if pushed, we would go 2A, 2B.
Okay. Mark Roche. Mark.
We're 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Peter Baker.
No huge feelings either way, but probably prefer 2A, 2B.
Okay.
But don't let it be a blocker. We can change it.
Okay. And Bob?
Yes, same as Peter. So no strong views, but probably 2A, 2B.
Okay. Lovely. Well, first of all, I'd like to just thank you all for being here. And thank you for the sentiment of getting the committee to get on with it and then sorting the detail out later. That will at least give us the opportunity to set up a study group in the Caribbean for 4 weeks for the committee members with your mandate. So thank you for that. Obviously, we have another meeting tomorrow night. I will try to post the recording of this meeting on YouTube tomorrow. It'll probably take a little while to upload because the files are huge on these. But by all means, then make it available to other members of your club who want to get an idea. Yeah, Mark.
Sorry, just if you're going to post it, should it not be done after tomorrow night's call?
That's an interesting one. I've been backwards and forwards on that. Should they be? Yeah, it'll probably take longer than that to upload anyway. So
Bear in mind, we've all just gone round and done 2 votes.
Yeah, true.
Would that make tomorrow night's meeting feel like they should comply or otherwise? And if they all listen to Megas, they'll all have 7 different options they'd like to vote on. But
Mr. Roach, you was ever listen to me, please. Come on.
Well, you get no choice sometime, Megas.
Well, yeah, I'll be quiet tonight, kid. To be fair.
It's not a big problem because I've done a lot of video editing in my time, so we can get that out. Yeah. So yeah, as I say, thanks for taking the time to come on the call. Thanks for the mandate. We'll obviously come back with a summary of both meetings to let you know where we are. We'll then communicate with the OCA. If the feeling is the same towards this tomorrow night, and I think with the conversations we've had already, we tend to feel that certainly the sentiment of going forward is there, then that'll give us a good situation to be able to go to the OCA and say, right, we're ready to go. The door is open. There's some work to be done on the detail, of course, but that will speed things along for them as well. And I think it will help them when they're talking to their clubs to know that there's a groundswell of willingness within the Charwell for this to happen. So there'll be no sense of them feeling they've been pushed into something that we don't want or they don't want. I think it'll be seen as a positive move for both. if you have any other thoughts or anything else that you want to pass on, please feel free to send them into the Secretary's email account and I'll share them with the rest of the committee. As I say, we're here not to push our agenda, we're here to represent you on this and make sure that everybody gets something that they're going to be happy with going forward. And I've left you just enough time to watch the last 12 balls of the 2020 if you haven't been watching it up until now, with England needing 19 from 12. I think Mo and Ali just got run out. So thanks very much, gentlemen. I shall end the meeting for all in a second unless anybody wants to put anything else in. Excellent. Thanks, guys. Speak soon.
Thanks, Ian. Well done, mate. Really well organised. Excellent.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you.